You ever do uncomfortable things to make stuff fit? Now, you guys know what I'm talking about here, right? You're like there, you're holding a couch, trying to fit it through the door of like your first apartment, and you absolutely refuse to take the legs off of it because that would take like an additional 5 minutes, and then you have to find a screwdriver, and you know, you don't like to be wrong, so you just like finagle it until you absolutely decimate the $14 white door that's now worth like $400 because wood prices are insane in 2021. You get it eventually, and you know, your mind is out of the gutter, but really, if you would have just done it right, we wouldn't be mad about our security deposit getting revoked because it's like all of a month's worth of rent, and that really sucks. I'm Dustin, dusty.co on Instagram if that's your fancy, and today we're talking about just that whole concept, but for wheels. We're talking about how to chop up your truck the right way, the suit and tie way, the full-on return security deposit way, and dare I say, the custom offsets way. Now, if you're new to the channel, then hi, hello. Don't forget to subscribe, and if you're looking for wheels or tires or suspension, be sure to check us out over at customoffsets.com. We've got tons of stock on things like Archon Off-Road, TIS, Fuel, Venom Power, Nitto, and more that you can get to your door in 10 days or less, which we love, but we're probably a little bit biased. Also, drop a comment down below on what you want us to talk about next, and while you're learning about things like the NorCal mod, stay all the way through the end so we can not just tell you how to do it, but how to do it the right way. Jumping into the typical approach of a NorCal for your truck, let's get started, right? The first thing you're gonna wanna do, you're gonna wanna get the truck off the ground. Whether you have like a lift, if you're fancy, or if you just have jack stands and you're doing it in your driveway, you know, it doesn't really matter, but the more appropriate clearance you have on the underside of your wheel wells, the better you can be. You just wanna be able to get in there and get at all of that stuff as efficiently as possible. Now, depending on the truck, it's going to be a little bit different here, right? Some are gonna have caps that you're gonna remove, or you know, some are gonna have like little trim pieces that you pop off, but either way, you're gonna wanna get that out of the way. And after you've done so, you gotta pull the fender liner out. Again, this is gonna vary, right? Things like the 16 to 18 Silverado are gonna run a T25 Torx bit, you know, but other trucks have smaller sizes, or like my Cat Eye, for example, has one screw and then a bunch of those little plastic pop-it tabs that always seem to break no matter what you do, when they just... Now, you don't have to remove the entire wheel liner, right? But typically, if you're a rookie, you're gonna wanna pull all of that out because it's gonna give you the most space to play around in there. If not, right, you can always use like a bungee cord and just tie it back to the coil spring or some other part of the suspension and, you know, pull half the liner back so you can get in there and work. But again, it's really up to you guys. Now, all NorCal mods are trying to accomplish the same basic principle, right? The ability to increase the total area that you can turn your wheel when you look at it vertically. As the tire turns, what gets in the way is the actual body of the truck. So the most common rubbing point is the bottommost portion of the wheel well on the front of the cab. If you can push that back, you allow the wheel more space to turn. You know, in certain General Motors trucks, like the 16 to 18 Silverado, you're gonna have a pinch weld, right? You separate the pinch weld, remove it, and then bang the living shit out of the metal with a big fucking hammer and roll it back. Now, the key here is that you focus on the inside point and work your way out towards the front. Now, in some other trucks, you don't need to cut all the way forward, and on some you do. What you're gonna wanna do here is take a Sharpie, right, and mark that cut line so that way you know where you're actually cutting before you do it with the saw, because, you know, there's measure twice, cut once kind of thing, and then make sure that it comes in underneath the truck so you don't see the cut when you put all of that back together. Then, grab your cutting tool of choice and just lop it off. After you've made the cut, you're gonna be able to bend the metal back to give the wheel greater clearance. Again, you wanna start from the inside out. Now again, there's typically a second cut that's gonna occur vertically, right, to cut out the portion that sticks out in the front. Once the cutting is finished, you're gonna wanna take a grinder, right, clean up the edges, make sure there's not any burrs or anything like that, and then paint the cut with some sort of black undercoating to prevent any rust if you're up here in the north, and then get that bottom fender bolt back up to sandwich your horizontal metal and your vertical cut together, and then grab a big hammer and start gently tapping the bottom of the fender up to bend the metal inwards. Again, gently, don't beat the snot out of it here. Again, a little bit of paint with a rubberized undercoating, throw the fender liner back in, put your caps back in place if you had them, and you are good to go. Congratulations, you've done a NorCal. Know that when you put that fender liner back in, you may have to do a little cutting and or bending, and that almost always that last bolt that keeps things tight is gonna be a self-tapper. And you just, whoop, in it goes. And just like that, you're done. But there's a lot more to a NorCal, right? See, when you do a NorCal mod, you're allowing the outwardmost part of the tire, typically the shoulder block or that big old side lug, to clear a greater area than before. Now, one thing to keep in mind here is that each platform is different, even the generations within each of the big three, right? Chevy, Ram, and Ford. Chevy is notorious for square wheel wells. What actually makes these wheel wells difficult is the inner structural integrity of the damn square wheel well to begin with, right? It's just, they're built heavy and it's cool because they don't bend, but also they take a lot to cut it and fold it and stuff. Now, Fords that are 2015 and above are going to require cutting portions of the front crash bar to make your bigger wheels and tires up front fit. That scares a lot of people, but if you've got poking wheels and tires, then a crash bar is really probably not the biggest thing on your priority list anyway, right? The lawyers require me to say that we do not condone this per the regulations, okay? We can't tell you to do it, but anyway, Ram, on the other hand, is bare bones. Their fender liners screw to the edge, which makes them perfect for a NorCal, and it makes it a lot easier to do. The problem here is that not only is it easy to do, but it's easy to see. Now, no matter which platform you have, the number one way people mess up their NorCal mod is rushing the entire thing. If you want to have a good NorCal mod that actually looks good and, is not like a third grade cutout snowflake with a little plastic scissors, you have to take your time. It's a fabricator style mod, if you would, right? You can do it in 30 minutes or you can do it in 3 days. As you're cutting things up and test fitting your wheels and tires, you'll find opportunities to do things right and to do things easy. Heating the plastic liners, for example, to mold them to the new shape will 110% make your NorCal mod look better, but heating and bending plastic takes a lot of time and a lot of patience, and when you gotta do it on both sides, people tend to just get impatient. When you cut relief lines for the brake lines and such, it's gonna help ensure that the liner fits comfortably and it looks proper, but again, if you wanna do it fast, you can just cut into it without grinding it down and it's gonna look like a 10-year-old again grab the scissors. Not a big deal until you put some Black Label Lighting rock lights in there at night to show your art class style wheel wells. Remember to do the front and the back depending on the severity of the wheels. Anything can fit, right? But doing it right can be seriously tedious work and no one really likes it. Most of the shitty NorCal mods come from people rushing to fit their wheels and tires for a show the same weekend, and then they ultimately end up ruining their entire truck. Undercoat. Mold the wheel liners, spend some time using the right hardware, and take your time with measuring because you'll have to do both sides of the truck either way. The old trucks are easy. Less is in there to make a mess, but as trucks continue to get more complex and more fancy, there's a growing amount of shit that hides in those little crevices that needs to be removed and or cut or relocated and out of the way, right? Just be ready, be patient, and above all else, it's going to be okay. And when you do decide to pick up wheels and tires, don't forget to snag them from CustomOffsets.com and get the tires packaged, right? That's mounted, balanced, and shipped to your door for free so you can avoid the judgment at the local tire shop. Let us know what you want to see from us next. I'm Dustin with Custom Offsets. Adios.